A frosty dawn crept over Missoula, Montana, tinting the sky with icy gray and pale gold as the city stretched awake. Out on the edge of town, the animal rescue stable crouched beneath a crust of snow, its old wooden beams shivering in the biting wind. Olivia's boots crunched on gravel as she stepped from her dusty truck, arms full of freshly washed horse blankets. Her breath fogged the air, mingling with the soft clouds rising from the horses inside. Even before she pushed open the heavy barn door, she could feel the tension inside. Hoofbeats drumming, anxious whinnies ricocheting against cold walls, hay rustling as nervous animals shifted in their stalls. Inside, warmth battled against the chill. Olivia paused, blinking, letting her eyes adjust to the gloom. Rows of stalls lined the shadowy barn, each holding a story. Some horses watched her with wary hope, others huddled in corners, still bearing the bruises of past neglect. The staff, bundled in thick coats and hats, moved quietly between the animals, murmuring words of comfort, checking water buckets, tossing flakes of hay. They nodded at Olivia, recognizing her from her regular donations, but their smiles were thin, weighed down by the unending river of need that poured through the stable's doors. She set the blankets down on a bench and let her gaze drift. Something tugged at her, something quieter than the rest. In the last stall, half hidden in darkness, a lone brown mare stood utterly still. She was smaller than most, her coat patchy with old scars crossing her flank like pale rivers, her body marked by hardship and fear. One ear twitched back and forth in an endless, anxious rhythm. Her tail swept the ground, restless. The light from a high window fell across her face, illuminating wide, haunted eyes that reflected nothing but distrust. The placard on her stall read, "Maple," underneath a note, "Unreachable, recent rescue, approach with caution." Olivia lingered, watching Maple from a distance. She noticed the mare's hooves, overgrown and cracked, and the slight limp when she shifted her weight. Hay lay untouched in her corner. A bowl of water, half frozen, sat just inside the door. Maple flinched at every movement, even the quietest sounds. Her whole body recoiled when a staff member tried to lay a gentle hand on her neck. No matter how soothing the voice, she refused every gesture, each treat, each kind word. Her terror was a wall, thick and unbroken. "She won't eat for anyone," murmured a volunteer, shaking his head. "We found her abandoned at a roadside corral, nearly starved to death. She's lost. I don't know if we'll ever reach her." Olivia's hand tightened around the edge of the stall. Something inside her, something raw and unhealed, recognized the look in Maple's eyes. It was the same emptiness that had followed Olivia home from war, the same silence that echoed in her own heart when the nightmares grew too loud. She glanced down at her hands, scarred, steady, but trembling just beneath the skin. A memory flickered, sitting alone on her first night home, surrounded by boxes and shadows, afraid to sleep, afraid to move, afraid to feel. The world had become too loud, too bright, too unpredictable. She'd learned to hide her wounds behind a calm face, to offer help to others while never quite letting anyone reach her. But something about Maple's isolation cut straight through Olivia's defenses. She stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. Maple's eyes darted to her, wild and desperate, as if bracing for another blow. Olivia crouched, lowering herself to the mare's level, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, girl. It's okay," she murmured, the words nearly lost in the barn's chaos. "You're safe here." Maple trembled, muscles bunching beneath her battered coat. A distant crash, a dropped bucket, made her shudder violently. Olivia stayed perfectly still, fighting the urge to reach out, to fix, to force comfort where none was wanted. She knew all too well the agony of forced closeness, of good intentions that stung like salt on a wound. Minutes ticked by. Olivia watched Maple, the rise and fall of her sides, the way she stared straight ahead, lost inside her own storm. For a long moment, Olivia considered walking away. There were plenty of other horses who would gratefully accept her blankets and her kindness. There was always more to do, more need than she could ever answer. But something inside her wouldn't let go. Maybe, she thought, this wasn't just about Maple. Maybe she was searching for something too, some way to prove that healing, no matter how slow or fragile, was still possible. Impulsively, Olivia called out to the manager. "If you still need Fosters, I'll take her," she said, surprising herself as much as anyone. Heads turned, surprised. "You sure, Liv?" the manager asked, glancing doubtfully at Maple. "She's a tough case." Olivia just nodded. "So am I." That evening, as the barn emptied and dusk settled outside, Olivia stood outside Maple's stall, softly humming a half-remembered tune. The barn was quieter now, shadows stretching across the straw. Maple, in her corner, stood rigid, still as a stone. But as Olivia's voice filled the air, Maple shifted, just a fraction, her body angling ever so slightly toward the sound. Her ears flicked forward, and for one fleeting moment, the wall of fear seemed to thin. Olivia smiled, heart pounding. Maybe, just maybe, a spark of trust had flickered to life between two broken souls, both searching for a way back to the light. The clouds over Missoula stacked into jagged towers as Olivia pulled her truck up to the shelter the next afternoon. Thunder rumbled in the distance, rolling through the valley like a warning. The air tasted of ozone and unsettled earth. Olivia took a breath, bracing herself. Today was the day she would bring Maple home. The stable was thick with the smell of wet hay, sweat, and nervous anticipation. Olivia moved quietly, speaking low and calm as she prepared the battered old horse trailer. She double-checked every latch, laid fresh straw on the floor, and spread one of the soft blankets she'd brought yesterday in the corner, hoping the familiar scent would ease the transition. Staff hovered nearby, offering advice and sideways glances. "She's never loaded before," one warned. "Last time we tried to move her, she almost broke the ramp." Olivia nodded, her jaw tight, heart thudding as she slipped a soft halter over Maple's head. The mare's eyes rolled white, and her sides quivered with each breath. Outside, the wind howled. Another crash of thunder snapped overhead, and the horses in the barn snorted, hooves drumming the wooden floors. "All right, girl, one step at a time," Olivia murmured, steadying her own shaking hands. She moved slowly, keeping her body relaxed, her voice gentle, as she coaxed Maple toward the open trailer. Maple balked, nostrils flaring, legs locked in place. Every muscle in her body trembled so violently the ramp vibrated beneath them. Olivia's heart lurched. She could almost feel Maple's panic, a silent scream that pressed against her own old wounds. The first fat drops of rain struck the tin roof, echoing like gunshots in the barn. A flash of lightning painted the world in stark white. Maple snorted, eyes wide, trying to whirl away. Olivia blocked her, not with force but with presence, her calm wrapping around the mare like an anchor. "Easy, Maple," she said, humming low. "We'll go together." Inch by inch, Maple edged onto the ramp, then froze. Olivia caught her breath, waiting, letting the silence fill the space between them. Another crash, closer now. Maple's legs shook so hard Olivia wondered if she'd collapse right there. Time seemed to stretch. The other horses quieted, sensing the tension. At last, with a shudder that ran from nose to tail, Maple lunged forward, half leaping, half sliding into the trailer. The sound of her hooves on metal rang sharp as panic. Olivia latched the door, heart hammering in her chest. As she climbed into the cab and turned the key, rain battered the windshield in sheets. The drive home crawled by, every mile tense and heavy. From the back, she heard the thump and scramble of hooves as Maple threw herself against the walls at every thunderclap. Sweat soaked the mare's flanks. Olivia kept one hand on the wheel, the other knuckles white on her knee, breathing in rhythm, forcing calm. Each rumble of thunder, each squeal of brakes threatened to undo them both. At last, Olivia pulled into her small ranch outside town. She parked close to the barn and jumped out, soaked instantly by cold rain. She opened the trailer, heart in her throat. Maple stood trembling, eyes wild, foam flecking her chest. For a long moment she refused to move, just stared into the distance, shivering so violently the trailer rattled. Olivia climbed up beside her, ignoring the cold water streaming down her back. "Come on, Maple," she coaxed, voice barely a whisper above the storm. "You're safe, I promise." Maple stared. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, and then, with a desperate surge, she bolted past Olivia, nearly knocking her over. The mare shot through the open barn door and careened into a dark corner. Pressed so tight against the wall, Olivia feared she might hurt herself. The barn was warm, but thick with fear. The scent of wet straw, sweat, and raw terror filled the air. Maple refused food, refused water, refused even to look at Olivia. She just stood in the shadows, every muscle rigid, eyes wide and unblinking. Olivia slumped onto a wooden stool nearby, dripping and exhausted. The weight of her past, of every failed attempt at connection, every lost friend, every sleepless night, settled heavy on her shoulders. She tried to talk, tried to soothe. She sang, hummed, even read aloud from an old paperback she kept tucked in her coat. Nothing seemed to reach Maple. The mare stared at the wall, lost to a world Olivia couldn't enter. Night fell with a slow, aching quiet. The storm raged outside, wind rattling the windows, rain hammering the tin roof. Olivia sat with her back to Maple's stall, the cold seeping into her bones. She replayed the day in her mind. Had she made a mistake? Was she in over her head? Could she ever reach this wounded animal, or was she just fooling herself? Sometime past midnight, Olivia's head jerked up. The barn was still except for the patter of rain and the soft snorts of sleeping horses. Then a sound, almost too faint to catch. A low, distressed whinny, shaky and small, echoed through the dark. It was Maple. Olivia's chest clenched, guilt and uncertainty gnawing at her. She wanted to go to the mare, to offer comfort, but she stayed where she was, remembering her own first night's home. How she'd wanted company but couldn't bear a single touch. Olivia lay awake long after the whinny faded, wrestling with doubt. Maybe she wasn't strong enough. Maybe some wounds never healed. At sunrise, the storm finally broke. Pale gold slipped into the barn. Olivia forced herself up, joints stiff, and shuffled over to Maple's stall. She blinked, then smiled, surprised. Maple, still trembling, stood over a small pile of hay, nibbling, tentatively, for the first time since she'd arrived. A flicker of hope sparked in Olivia's chest. It wasn't much, but it was something. Just enough to keep trying. Gentle sunlight seeped through the dusty barn window, pouring a golden warmth onto the straw and softening the hard lines of the stalls. For the first time since Maple arrived, the morning felt less like a battle and more like a question. What small piece of trust might today hold? Olivia moved quietly, carrying a chipped mug of coffee, letting her steps fall soft and even. The barn was peaceful, the other horses still drowsy, only a few rustling in their stalls. She settled herself on a mound of clean straw, a respectful distance from Maple's corner, and opened a battered novel. Olivia read aloud, her voice low and steady, the words drifting through the air like dust motes. Maple didn't look up. She stood facing the far wall, tense but listening. Every so often, her ears flicked back, catching the rhythm of Olivia's reading, the cadence of her voice. The mare's tail swished, slow and thoughtful, not quite as frantic as before. Olivia was in no rush. She had learned, painfully, that healing could not be hurried. After leaving the Navy, she'd imagined her own return to civilian life would be easier. She'd pictured herself sleeping in her own bed, windows open to the night breeze, laughter echoing in the kitchen, her old life slotting easily back into place. But nothing was simple. The silence in her small house was crushing. She found herself startled by small noises, panicked by crowded stores, comforted only by the presence of animals, who never expected more than she could give. Now, as she read, Olivia remembered those first months, the weight of isolation, the way she would sometimes sleep curled up in a corner of the living room, boots on, just in case she needed to run. She understood Maple's fear, the way old pain clung like a second skin, shaping every breath and movement. Maple eyed Olivia sideways. Each time Olivia looked up, the mare stopped chewing hay and went utterly still, her eyes wide. But Olivia only turned a page, pretending not to notice, and kept her body loose, her posture unthreatening. After a long stretch of silence, Maple inched closer to the feed pile Olivia had placed, just within reach, but not so close as to force her out of hiding. The hours passed in this gentle routine, Olivia reading, Maple listening, the quiet between them full of unspoken questions. Sometimes Olivia sang softly, a fragment of an old folk song, the kind her mother used to hum while folding laundry. Maple's ears swiveled forward at the sound, her nostrils flaring in interest. She ate a few mouthfuls of hay, then stopped, then tried again, each bite an act of courage. The days slipped by, each much like the last. Olivia brought her book, a warm cup of tea, and sometimes just her presence, sitting in silence on the straw. The barn became their shared sanctuary, a place where words were optional, where healing unfolded in slow, invisible increments. Other people came and went, volunteers feeding, cleaning stalls, making jokes, but Maple always retreated from them, shrinking into the shadows, her eyes haunted and wary. Yet when Olivia was alone, Maple inched forward, testing the space between fear and trust. One rainy afternoon, Olivia set aside her book and just spoke to Maple. Not about horses, not about wounds or healing, but about her own nightmares, the guilt that gnawed at her when she remembered friends she'd left behind, the anxiety that sometimes kept her from leaving the house for days. She didn't expect Maple to understand, but she found herself comforted by the act of telling her story aloud. Maple's ears flicked, her head lowering as Olivia's voice trembled on certain words. It felt strange, vulnerable, but also freeing. "I don't know if it ever really goes away," Olivia said softly. "Maybe we just learn to live with it. Maybe we help each other carry the load." A long silence. Maple shuffled in the straw, glancing at Olivia, then away. The world outside was soft with rain, the air inside tinged with hay and damp wood. Olivia listened to the rhythm of Maple's breathing, felt her own heart slow to match. She remembered how, when she first came home, she'd wished for someone, anyone, who would just sit beside her and not ask her to explain. Maybe that was what Maple needed too. After several days, a new pattern emerged. Maple began to peek around the edge of the stall when Olivia sang or talked quietly. She wouldn't approach if anyone else was nearby, and she never allowed Olivia to touch her. but the invisible wall between them thinned just a little more each time. Olivia could see the difference in Maple's body. Less tension in her legs, her head held just a bit higher, her eyes less wild. Late one evening, Olivia watched Maple from the doorway. The mare was dozing, one hoof cocked, her breathing slow and steady. Olivia whispered goodnight, her voice gentle as she closed the barn door. As she walked back to the house, she realized something had shifted. Not just for Maple, but for herself. In choosing to show up every day, in offering her company without expectation, Olivia was healing too. It wasn't dramatic. No one else would see the change. But it was real. The next morning, as the golden light returned, Olivia found Maple a step closer than before. Not a leap, not a miracle, just a tiny victory in the slow dawn. In that quiet space, hope grew. Two souls, broken in different ways, learning to trust again, one careful breath at a time. The Montana mornings came softly that week, sunlight painting gentle lines through the high barn windows and streaking the air with gold. The cold was losing its bite, but Olivia still dressed in layers, coffee steaming in her hands as she crossed the yard each day. The routine had settled into her bones. Early rising, the crunch of frost underfoot, the barn's familiar smells and shadows. Yet inside, everything was quietly shifting. Olivia's approach was different now. She'd learned to give Maple space, not just physical distance, but the dignity of choosing her own pace. She'd open the barn doors in the morning and, instead of coaxing, simply sat on the porch with her boots propped on the lowest step, sipping her coffee and humming the same tune that always caught Maple's ear. Sometimes she brought a book and read. Sometimes she just watched the slow dance of dust in the morning light. At first, Maple stayed rooted in her stall, eyes trained on Olivia, the world outside a terrifying expanse. But every day, as the barn doors swung wide and the ranch woke around them, Maple's courage seemed to grow in half-inch increments. She would nose the straw by the open gate, snort softly at the chill breeze, then, one hesitant step, venture out into the paddock. Even then, the world was full of threats. A distant neigh from a neighbor's horse would send Maple skittering back, eyes wild, heart pounding. The sound of a car engine, a hawk's cry, or even the sudden snap of a twig. Any could shatter her fragile calm. But Olivia never pressured her. She simply offered gentle encouragement. A soft word or a quiet hum, never stepping forward, never reaching out. She let Maple set the rules. In the evenings, Olivia would move Maple's feed bucket just a little closer to the paddock fence. She didn't expect Maple to eat in the open, not yet, but each day the food drew the mare farther from her stall. By dusk, when the world was hushed and the air carried a sweetness only found at the end of a long day, Maple would nibble grass near the fence, still glancing over her shoulder but holding her ground a little longer each night. One evening, Olivia stood by the barn door, watching the horizon fade from blue to violet. The chores were done, the horses settled. Her mind wandered, back to her own days of fear, to memories she rarely voiced. She felt her chest tighten, breath growing shallow, a familiar panic threatening to pull her under. She gripped the doorframe, eyes squeezed shut, counting her breaths, trying to anchor herself in the present. In the silence, a soft sound made her look up. Maple was there, standing a few feet away, her dark eyes fixed on Olivia. The mare's sides heaved, her own tension visible, but she didn't bolt. Instead, Maple edged closer, drawn by something she couldn't name, as if the echo of Olivia's pain called to her own. She didn't touch, didn't nuzzle, but simply stood, present and steady, her breathing syncing with Olivia's in the quiet. It was as if Maple, sensing the invisible storm, had come to offer what comfort she could. Olivia let the tears fall, silent and unhidden. For a moment she let go of the need to be strong. She felt the barn around her, the rough wood, the sweet hay, the gentle weight of Maple's presence. Her panic ebbed, replaced by a fragile peace. The next morning, as if nothing had happened, Olivia found Maple waiting by the gate. Her ears twitched, her gaze calm but alert. Olivia greeted her softly, feeling gratitude and awe at the unspoken bond forming between them. Days slipped by, measured not by dramatic breakthroughs, but by subtle changes. Maple's coat began to shine as her health improved. The limp faded as her hooves, now properly trimmed, found solid footing. She explored the paddock at dusk, her silhouette peaceful against the setting sun. Olivia, for her part, grew stronger, steadier, her steps lighter, her laughter more frequent. She felt less haunted, more at home in her own skin. One afternoon, Olivia brought her chair into the paddock and sat with her journal, writing about everything and nothing. Maple grazed nearby, her tail swishing lazily, and for the first time she lay down in the grass just a few feet from Olivia. It was a posture of trust, vulnerable, exposed, yet calm. Maple's eyes drooped half-closed, her body still trembling now and then, but no longer locked in fear. As twilight deepened, Olivia hummed her song. Maple inched closer, her head dropping to the ground, and together, in the quiet hush of evening, they simply existed. Two souls who had lost and found themselves, bound not by words, but by shared silence. That night, as Olivia closed the barn doors and glanced back at the paddock, she felt the certainty that something rare was growing. Something built not on grand gestures, but on patience, respect, and the willingness to stay, even when it was hard. Maple was no longer alone. Neither was Olivia. Their healing was slow, imperfect, and unfinished. But it was real, and for the first time in a long while, hope felt like something they could both believe in. The days continued to lengthen, and a soft, early spring breeze swept across Olivia's ranch. The world felt a little less harsh now. Buds were forming on the cottonwoods lining the paddock, and the air hummed with the promise of new beginnings. Olivia woke each morning with the light, heart beating with cautious optimism. Every dawn seemed to offer the same question. Would today be the day Maple took another step forward? One morning, Olivia came into the barn carrying something new, a faded blue halter and a gently worn lead rope. She paused at Maple's stall, letting the mare sniff the halter from across the gate, careful not to push too quickly. Maple's eyes widened, nostrils flaring as she caught the unfamiliar scent of leather and metal. Olivia knelt, letting the halter hang from the crook of her arm. She ran her fingers through her own hair, brushing it out methodically, talking softly all the while, not to Maple directly, but to the space between them. You're okay. No one's going to make you do anything today. Just want you to see this. Get used to it. That's all. Maple watched, wary but curious, her ears flicking at the cadence of Olivia's voice. For days, this became their routine. Olivia left the halter draped over the paddock fence, never forcing it, always allowing Maple to approach or retreat as she wished. Each time Maple stepped closer, Olivia offered a gentle word and stepped back herself, giving the mare the power to control the distance. It was slow going. Sometimes Maple startled at the slightest movement, the snap of the lead rope, the clink of the halter buckle, and would bolt to the far side of the paddock, heart pounding, sides heaving. Other times, she'd sniff the halter, her breath warm on Olivia's hand, before skittering away. Olivia never showed frustration, never let her own anxiety bleed into the encounter. She understood, intimately, what it meant to need time to rebuild trust. On the fourth morning, after an hour spent brushing her own hair and singing softly under her breath, Olivia extended her arm, palm open, halter hanging loose. Maple hesitated, then took a tentative step forward, lowering her head. Her breath was shaky, but she didn't back away. Olivia let Maple explore, feeling the brush of the mare's whiskers against her wrist. "You're so brave, Maple," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. "Look at you." Maple's eyes flicked to Olivia's, uncertain, but something in the moment changed. For the first time, she didn't flinch when Olivia touched her mane. Olivia's hand was gentle, slow, and full of patience. Maple stood, tense but unmoving, as the halter slipped over her nose and behind her ears. A surge of emotion rose in Olivia's chest. She gave Maple all the time she needed, letting the lead rope dangle while she scratched the mare's withers. "We're just going to stand here for a bit, all right? No rush." The following afternoon, Olivia decided it was time to try something new. She led Maple, now haltered, to the open barn door. The mare balked, eyes showing too much white, hooves rooted in place. The world outside was alive with sound, a tractor chugging in the neighbor's field, a dog barking far off, the wind sighing through the grass. Maple's legs trembled as Olivia urged her forward, step by step. They stood at the threshold for a long time. Olivia stroked Maple's neck, murmuring encouragement. "Just one step, then another. That's how we do it." Slowly, Maple followed. Her muscles quivered, but she kept her head down, tail swishing in anxious circles. Olivia led her in a wide arc around the paddock, never once pulling the rope tight, allowing Maple to set the pace. The mare shied at a sudden noise, a robin bursting from the grass, but didn't bolt. Olivia steadied her, standing firm, letting Maple press her head against her shoulder for reassurance. "You're okay. I'm right here," Olivia said, her own heart pounding in time with Maple's. The sky darkened suddenly as a rogue thundercloud swept overhead. The first rumble was distant, but the second crash was loud, echoing across the valley. Maple panicked, eyes wide, body jerking sideways. The lead rope pulled taut, and for a second, Olivia feared Maple might break free. But then, unexpectedly, Maple bumped her head against Olivia's shoulder, grounding herself. Olivia inhaled sharply, feeling the electricity between fear and trust. "It's all right, just a storm," Olivia managed, her own voice shaky. "We'll get through it together." They hurried back to the barn as rain started to fall, both of them breathless and soaked, but neither lost to panic. Safe inside, Olivia removed the halter and let Maple shake herself off, the mare's muscles gradually relaxing. That night, as the rain pattered against the roof and the barn grew quiet, Olivia replayed the day's events in her mind. Each small victory, a touch, a step, a moment of connection, felt enormous. She realized that their progress wasn't measured in miles, but in heartbeats. The next morning, Maple greeted her at the gate, head high, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Trust was fragile, still easily shattered, but it was growing stronger with each passing day. For the first time since Maple arrived, Olivia allowed herself to believe that healing was truly possible. For them both. A gentle rhythm settled over Olivia's ranch as spring deepened. The early days of tension gave way to something steadier, almost soothing, a routine that both horse and woman began to trust. Every morning, as the sunlight painted the fields with new green, Maple would be waiting at the paddock gate, ears forward, her eyes following Olivia's every move. The barrier between them, once a thick wall of fear, had thinned to something soft and fragile, held together by countless tiny acts of patience. Breakfast was the start of their ritual. Olivia would scoop oats into a battered old bucket, sprinkle in a handful of carrots, and carry it across the yard. Maple greeted her with a low, questioning nicker, sometimes even stretching her neck for a gentle scratch before diving into her meal. Olivia watched with quiet pride as the mare's coat grew glossy, her body filling out with health. The limp that once defined every step had nearly vanished, replaced by a steady, confident walk. Grooming came next. At first, Maple would only tolerate Olivia brushing her from the other side of a fence. But after weeks of slow, respectful contact, she began to stand quietly, head low, eyes closing in contentment, as Olivia ran the curry comb over her withers. Sometimes, when Olivia's hands lingered just a second longer, she'd feel Maple's nose nudge gently against her arm, a wordless request for more. It was a new language built entirely on trust. The ranch itself was coming alive, too. The neighbor's tractor hummed in the next field. Dogs barked at passing cars. Birds called from every treetop. Where these sounds once sent Maple into a spiral of panic, now she seemed to take them in stride, only flinching at the loudest, most sudden noises. Olivia always took time to pause, reassuring Maple with a quiet word or a soft touch. Gradually, the mare learned that these everyday noises were not threats, but just part of their world. One afternoon, Olivia brought an old radio into the barn and tuned it to a country station. The twang of guitars and the easy lilt of voices filled the air. At first, Maple's ears twitched nervously, but as Olivia swayed and sang along, the mare relaxed. Sometimes Olivia caught herself laughing, real laughter, not just a shadow of joy, and Maple would prick her ears, eyes bright with curiosity. A few nights a week, Maple would doze just outside Olivia's window. The sight of the mare's silhouette in the moonlight became a comfort to Olivia, a reminder that she was never truly alone. On those evenings, Olivia would sit by her window, journal in hand, reflecting on the strange, beautiful partnership that was growing between them. It was on one of these nights, as a sudden storm crashed through the valley, that their bond was truly tested. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the ranch in stark white flashes. Thunder shook the windows, and the wind howled around the barn. Olivia hurried out, heart pounding, boots slipping in the mud. She found Maple inside the barn, wild-eyed, sides heaving with panic. The mare circled her stall, searching for escape, every instinct screaming for flight. Olivia's own fear threatened to swallow her. The old dread returned, tightness in her chest, the metallic taste of adrenaline. For a moment she froze, caught between her need to help and the urge to run. Then she forced herself forward, breathing deeply, humming the song she always sang for Maple. She reached out, voice trembling. "It's okay, Maple. I'm here. It's just thunder. Just noise." Maple stopped, turning toward Olivia, nostrils flaring. The mare trembled, but she didn't bolt. Instead, she lowered her head, pressing her muzzle into Olivia's lap. The contact was electric, a shock of trust and need passing between them. Olivia wrapped her arms around Maple's neck, feeling the warmth and strength of the animal who had, against all odds, become her friend. Together they waited out the storm. Olivia hummed softly, her breath slowing, her heartbeat steadying as Maple leaned into her. The barn's darkness was punctuated only by the occasional flash of lightning, but the terror that once ruled both woman and horse seemed less overwhelming when faced together. Later, as the rain softened and the thunder faded, Olivia whispered, "Who's saving who, huh?" Maple only snorted, nuzzling Olivia's shoulder, as if to say that such things no longer mattered. That night, as Olivia lay in bed, she thought about all the patterns they were breaking. Patterns of fear, of withdrawal, of believing that no one could understand. Maple's trauma echoed her own, a mirror reflecting pain but also resilience. Through Maple, Olivia saw herself anew, not as someone broken, but as someone capable of healing, of offering safety, of loving and being loved in return. The next morning, the sun rose on a ranch changed by the smallest of miracles. Trust, built through presence and patience, had given both woman and horse a new way to belong. The ranch had slipped into the warm, fragrant heart of spring. New grass shimmered underfoot, and the apple trees behind the barn were heavy with blossoms, their petals falling like pale confetti when the wind gusted. Life was gentler these days for Olivia and Maple. Their days had become a quiet duet, full of routines that felt safe. Morning walks around the paddock, slow grooming sessions, afternoons spent listening to the radio with the barn doors thrown open to let the sunshine in. Olivia no longer started at every sudden noise. She had learned to trust her space, and in small ways, trust herself again. But healing, she knew too well, wasn't a straight line. The scars she carried inside still had the power to open up with a sharp memory or an unexpected trigger. It happened, always, when she least expected it. One night, after a day that had started with sunshine but ended with heavy rain, Olivia tossed and turned in her bed. Thunder had rolled in before dusk, soaking the paddocks and sending Maple running for the safety of the barn. Olivia had stayed late to settle her, whispering reassurances and sharing a quiet moment of peace. When she finally dragged herself inside and collapsed, exhaustion pressed down on her like a weight. But sleep didn't come easily. Instead, it fractured into half-remembered dreams, flashes of her Navy days, sirens blaring, frantic voices, the taste of fear. She jolted awake, heart racing, sweat slicking her forehead. The room was pitch dark. For a moment, Olivia wasn't sure where she was. She couldn't catch her breath, couldn't slow her racing thoughts. She sat up, gasping for air, her hands shaking violently. Panic squeezed her chest, sharp and relentless, until she thought she might pass out. She pressed her palms to her face, fighting the urge to run from the room. For several long moments, she was lost in the storm of her own mind, caught between the safety of the present and the terrors of the past. Then she heard it. A soft, insistent sound at her window. A whicker, low and urgent. Olivia blinked, disoriented, as Maple's silhouette materialized in the moonlight, her broad head peering through the open window. Olivia tried to steady her breathing, but the panic wouldn't let go. Her vision blurred at the edges, and her body felt impossibly heavy. Maple whickered again, louder this time, and then, without warning, she shoved her nose through the open space, knocking over a stack of books on the sill. "Maple!" Olivia choked, voice trembling. But the mare didn't flinch. She snorted, tossing her head, then braced her forelegs and nudged Olivia's shoulder with surprising force. Olivia staggered backward, startled. The shock jolted her out of the worst of her fear. Maple's dark eyes were steady, full of fierce concern, refusing to let Olivia drift away. She pressed in again, insistent, demanding Olivia's attention. It was almost as if Maple had sensed the danger and was determined not to let Olivia disappear into it. Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks, unchecked and silent. I'm okay. She stammered. Maple's muzzle found her hand, warm and solid, anchoring her in the here and now. The horse wouldn't let go, wouldn't let her fall. Olivia wept openly, shoulders shaking, the fear and sorrow and loneliness of so many years pouring out in ragged breaths. Minutes passed. Olivia's trembling slowed. Her breaths came deeper. Maple stayed close, her breath huffing softly against Olivia's neck. She rested her head on Olivia's lap, eyes half closed, as if she understood this was her moment to give back. Olivia stroked Maple's nose, grounding herself in the solid reality of her friend. "You came for me, huh? You really did," she whispered. The barn outside was silent except for the rain. Olivia's world had shrunk to the warmth of Maple's presence, the steady rise and fall of the mare's breathing. For the first time in years, Olivia didn't hide her tears. She let herself cry until there was nothing left. No shame, no fear, only the quiet company of a friend who understood what it meant to be lost. In the weeks that followed, Olivia noticed how Maple had changed. The mare had become her anchor, responding instinctively to Olivia's moods, sometimes nudging her when she felt anxious, other times simply standing close, a silent sentinel. The roles had reversed in the most beautiful way. Olivia, who'd set out to rescue a broken horse, had found herself being rescued in return. Yet a new worry crept in. The rescue shelter was due for a quarterly check, and the staff had hinted that Maple, still officially a foster, might need to return for reassessment. Olivia's chest tightened whenever she thought about it. The idea of letting Maple go, of disrupting the fragile trust and healing they'd built, terrified her. One afternoon, a shelter volunteer named Carla came by to check on Maple's progress. Olivia watched, nerves prickling, as Carla walked the paddock, clipboard in hand. Maple kept close to Olivia's side, her body tense but brave. Carla paused, watching them. "She's come a long way," she said, her tone softening. "But there are a lot of horses that need help, Olivia. I don't know how much longer the board will let you keep her." Olivia swallowed hard, fighting to keep her voice steady. "She's not just another case to me, Carla. She's family." Carla studied them both, her gaze lingering on the way Maple's nose rested on Olivia's shoulder, the way Olivia's hand curled protectively around the mare's jaw. She nodded, scribbling something on her clipboard. "We'll see what we can do." As the sun set, Olivia leaned her head against Maple's neck, breathing in the sweet scent of horse and hay. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. She would fight for Maple for both their sakes. That night, as the stars blinked awake and the world grew quiet, Olivia understood that some bonds are formed not just by saving, but by being saved. Sometimes, the only way out of darkness is to reach for someone, human or horse, who refuses to let you go. The morning air was alive with anticipation. Olivia awoke before sunrise, her nerves tingling with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Today was Maple's assessment day at the local veterans ranch, a day that would determine not just the mare's future, but Olivia's as well. She spent extra time brushing Maple's coat until it gleamed in the soft light, whispering encouragements as she braided a small section of the mare's mane for luck. Maple watched her, patient and calm, as if she somehow knew this day was different. Olivia loaded Maple into the trailer with practiced care. Gone were the trembling legs and wild, rolling eyes. Maple stepped forward slowly, steady and trusting, pausing just long enough for Olivia to stroke her neck. The drive across town was silent, but not tense. Olivia kept her hand on the steering wheel, humming the same tune that had soothed them both so many nights before. The veterans' ranch sprawled across rolling green pastures, bordered by white fences and clusters of old oak trees. As Olivia unloaded Maple, she noticed other horses grazing nearby and a small group of men and women, some in uniform, some in civilian clothes, waiting by the arena. A trainer named Ben, a tall man with kind eyes and a battered ball cap, came over to greet them. "Maple's the one?" he asked, looking the mare up and down. Olivia nodded, her heart in her throat. Ben motioned for her to lead Maple into the arena, where a simple obstacle course had been set up. Around the edge, the veterans watched, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The test was straightforward, but the stakes felt impossibly high. Maple was expected to remain calm under pressure, respond gently to strangers, and most importantly, help ground her handler during moments of visible anxiety, a simulation meant to mimic panic attacks or episodes of PTSD. Olivia took a breath, remembering the dark nights and the way Maple had stood beside her, unwavering. She walked Maple to the start of the course, feeling the mare's steady presence at her side. Ben called out instructions, his voice echoing in the stillness. The first test, walking Maple past a flag flapping loudly in the wind. Maple's ears flicked back, but she didn't shy or pull away. Olivia stroked her neck, murmuring softly, and Maple's muscles loosened. They passed the flag with ease. The next station, a volunteer in a wheelchair rolled forward, waving a cane. Olivia's pulse quickened. She could feel Maple's tension rise, the mare's breath coming faster. Olivia squeezed the lead rope, grounding herself, and began to hum. The tune floated through the air, and Maple's eyes locked on Olivia's face. The mare took a step forward, then another, until she was close enough for the volunteer to reach out and stroke her shoulder. Maple flinched at first, but then relaxed, her head lowering in acceptance. Finally came the simulation of an anxiety episode. Ben signaled to Olivia, who nodded, and let her body recall the feelings she knew too well. The shallow breath, the trembling hands, the distant gaze. She forced herself to relive the panic, her body shaking just enough for the evaluators to see. Maple, sensing the change, moved closer. She pressed her muzzle against Olivia's chest, nuzzling her hand, and let out a deep, calming breath. Olivia felt her own fear ebb away, replaced by the solid warmth of the horse she'd come to rely on. The evaluators, Ben and two others, watched in silent awe. When the exercise ended, Ben walked over, his eyes bright with surprise. "That was incredible. She didn't just stay calm, she took care of you." Olivia laughed, the sound shaky but proud. "She's saved me more times than I can count." The assessment continued with other handlers, but all eyes kept returning to Maple and Olivia, the quiet team whose trust had been built from the ground up. After the last horse finished, the evaluators huddled for a moment. Then Ben returned, a certificate in his hands. "Congratulations," he said, holding it out to Olivia. "Maple is officially certified as a therapy horse for veterans. We'd love to have you both visit as often as you can." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes as she stroked Maple's nose. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The news traveled fast. That afternoon, Olivia was invited to share Maple's story at the Veterans Support Group. The community room was filled with folding chairs and worn couches, the air thick with the unspoken weight of old wounds and fresh hopes. Olivia stood at the front, Maple's halter in her hands, her voice trembling as she spoke. She was considered unreachable when I first met her. Traumatized, terrified, barely able to eat or let anyone touch her. But I saw something in her that reminded me of myself. We both carried scars that nobody else could see. And somehow, we helped each other heal. She described the slow journey of trust, the setbacks, the small victories. As she spoke, heads nodded in understanding. Some of the toughest-looking men wiped at their eyes. Others approached afterward, asking if they could meet Maple, telling their own stories of pain and recovery. That evening, staff from the animal shelter visited the ranch. They stood by the fence, tears shining in their eyes as they watched Maple stand calmly among the veterans, allowing strangers to pet her mane and murmur their thanks. The transformation was undeniable. A terrified, broken mare had become a source of hope and comfort, her story rippling outward to touch lives far beyond Olivia's. Later, as the sun dipped below the hills, Olivia led Maple back to the trailer. They walked side by side, no lead rope needed, just trust and quiet understanding. Olivia looked at Maple, feeling a swelling pride and gratitude that she couldn't put into words. The journey wasn't over, but a new chapter had begun. Maple had become more than a survivor. She was a healer, a companion, a light for those still lost in their own storms, and together, they were ready to face whatever came next. With Maple's certification complete, a new sense of purpose blossomed for Olivia. What had begun as a personal battle for healing and trust now echoed far beyond the borders of her ranch. She and Maple became regular visitors at the Veterans Center, their presence soon requested at community events, local schools, and even therapy sessions across Missoula. It was as if every step they had taken together, every moment of fear and patience, every victory, now paved a road for others to follow. At the Veterans Center, word spread quickly about the gentle brown mare with the wise eyes. Olivia would load Maple into the trailer, and together, they'd drive into town, the routine now effortless. Each time Maple stepped from the trailer, her hooves striking pavement with quiet confidence, Olivia saw how people's faces changed. The toughest, most stoic veterans softened in her presence, hands reaching out to stroke Maple's mane or simply stand near her, feeling her steady breath. One morning, Olivia watched as a burly Marine named Sam, who hadn't spoken in group therapy for months, approached Maple with visible trepidation. His hands shook as he reached for her, eyes darting with uncertainty. Maple stood perfectly still, her body language calm and inviting. As Sam pressed his forehead to Maple's, his shoulders sagged, and a shudder ran through him. He stood that way for a long time, silent tears streaking his face. When he finally turned away, he whispered to Olivia, "If Maple can get through what she did, maybe there's hope for me too." That was the start. Soon, more veterans lined up, some laughing, some fighting back tears, as they told their own stories or simply stood in Maple's quiet company. Olivia realized then that healing wasn't about grand gestures. It was about being present, about small, daily acts of courage. Just showing up again and again, no matter how broken you felt inside. Their work grew beyond the Veterans Center. A counselor from the local elementary school heard about Maple's calming presence and asked if she could visit a classroom of anxious children. Olivia hesitated. She worried Maple would be overwhelmed, but trusted the bond they shared. The morning they arrived, the schoolyard was buzzing with excitement. Teachers lined up students in careful rows as Olivia led Maple through the gates. Inside the classroom, a hush fell. Some children gasped at the sight of the horse. Others hung back, uncertainty shadowing their faces. A little girl named Abby, who rarely spoke and was terrified of loud noises, stood in the back, twisting her hands. Maple, as if sensing her fear, ambled gently over. She lowered her head, warm breath washing over Abby's small fingers. The girl's eyes widened, and for the first time all year, she whispered, "Hi, Maple." The teachers stared in disbelief as Abby, step by step, grew bolder, stroking Maple's nose, giggling when the horse snorted softly. The magic wasn't just for children and veterans. Word spread, and Maple began to appear at therapy sessions for first responders, grief support groups, even retirement homes. Everywhere she went, something changed in the room. A hush, a sense of safety, a willingness to share the burden of pain. Olivia marveled at how a once broken mare could give so much strength simply by existing. It was at one of these therapy groups, held in a church basement on a rainy Thursday, that Olivia realized the true depth of what they had created. As the session ended, a young veteran lingered by Maple's side. He traced the scars along her flank, his voice barely above a whisper. People think we're supposed to just bounce back, like nothing happened. But sometimes I feel like I'm still trapped, you know? Like I'm stuck behind glass and can't get out. He paused, and Olivia nodded, understanding in her bones the ache of his words. He continued, "But Maple, she doesn't hide her scars. She's not ashamed, and she trusts again. That gives me hope, maybe for the first time." The words stayed with Olivia long after they left. She found herself reflecting, journaling late into the night. She wrote, "This story isn't just about saving a horse or even saving myself. It's about the unseen thread that binds everyone who has ever felt broken, everyone who has ever longed for a second chance. Real healing happens in those moments, quiet, steady, and persistent. Not in dramatic recoveries, but in the courage to simply try again tomorrow." Maple's transformation became a symbol throughout the community. Local newspapers ran stories about her, and people who'd never met her sent letters and donations to the rescue shelter, inspired to foster or adopt animals themselves. One family wrote, "After reading Maple's story, we opened our home to a rescue dog. Thank you for helping us believe in second chances." Even city officials reached out, offering to support more therapy programs for both animals and people. Through all the change, Olivia never lost sight of what mattered most: the bond between her and Maple, and the quiet moments that continued to define their healing. She still spent evenings in the barn, reading aloud, singing softly as Maple drifted to sleep. She treasured every small sign of trust: Maple's head resting on her shoulder, the way the mare sought her out when thunderstorms rolled through. During a gathering at the Veterans Center, Olivia was approached by a staff member who had watched their journey from the beginning. He smiled, eyes shining. "I think you've changed more lives than you realize, Olivia. Maple, too." Olivia looked around the room, at veterans laughing together, children giggling as they fed Maple carrots, old friends lingering in the barn long after sunset. She realized he was right. The story she'd shared with Maple had become a beacon for others, a ripple effect spreading hope and empathy where there had once been only pain. She squeezed Maple's mane, whispering, "We're making a difference, aren't we?" The mare lifted her head, ears flicking, as if she agreed. As dusk settled over Missoula, Olivia understood. What they had built was larger than themselves. Maple's courage was changing lives, binding a community together, and proving again and again that even the most broken souls could learn to trust, to heal, and to inspire others to do the same. A bright Saturday morning dawned in Missoula, the air clear and the sky a brilliant, hopeful blue. The city was alive with the hum of the weekend, farmers' market banners fluttering in the gentle breeze, the scent of fresh bread and wildflowers drifting through the streets. Olivia parked her truck at the edge of the market, taking a deep breath, the weight on her chest replaced by anticipation. Maple stood beside her, head high, mane braided with blue ribbons, each one a quiet testament to the people and lives she'd touched. Children clustered at the entrance, eyes wide, whispering in awe. Olivia smiled as she clipped on Maple's therapy badge, feeling a deep sense of gratitude that never seemed to fade, no matter how many mornings like this they shared. Together, they made their way through the crowds, Maple's hooves clopping softly against the pavement. People turned, smiling and waving, calling out greetings. Some knew Maple by name, Her story had traveled far, bringing out folks who just wanted to see for themselves the horse that had come back from the brink. Vendors reached out with handfuls of carrots, and Maple accepted them with quiet dignity. A woman in her 60s, holding a little boy's hand, stopped Olivia near a stand of sunflowers. "Is this Maple?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "We read about her in the paper. My grandson was so excited to meet her." Olivia nodded, heart full. She loves meeting new friends. She watched as the boy gently stroked Maple's muzzle, the fear and hesitation in his eyes melting into a shy smile. The market was full of moments like this, tiny connections, warm laughter, the simple, healing power of being present. Olivia found herself reflecting on the road that had brought them here. It was not a straight path, but one marked by doubt, setbacks, and unexpected beauty. She remembered the first day she'd seen Maple, trembling in her stall, eyes clouded by fear. She remembered the stormy night when she'd sat on the barn floor, breathing in rhythm with the terrified mare. She remembered the night Maple had saved her from her own panic, the way the roles had reversed without a word. Now Maple walked beside her, strong and clear-eyed, each step a promise that hope could be rebuilt. A reporter from the local newspaper approached, camera in hand. "Can we get a photo for next week's feature?" Folks keep asking about Maple. Olivia agreed, watching as people gathered around, eager to be part of the story. The photographer snapped pictures, Maple with the kids, with elderly neighbors, with Olivia herself. Afterward, the reporter pulled Olivia aside for a quick interview. "What do you hope people take away from Maple's journey?" she asked. Olivia thought for a moment, gazing at Maple's scarred but shining coat. "I think sometimes the ones we save end up saving us in ways we never expect. Maple taught me that patience and empathy are powerful, that healing isn't something you do alone. It's something you find in connection, in showing up for each other, even when it's hard." The reporter smiled, jotting down notes. "We've had people calling, wanting to adopt, to volunteer. Your stories inspired a lot of folks." Later that afternoon, Olivia noticed more families signing up at the shelter's booth, eager to learn about fostering and adopting rescues. Donations filled a jar set on the edge of the table, coins and bills, but also hand-drawn cards from children who'd met Maple that morning. She read one, written in a careful, looping scrawl. "Thank you for helping Maple. She's my hero." As the day wound down, Olivia and Maple sat in the shade of an old oak tree on the edge of the market. Maple grazed contentedly while Olivia watched the crowd. A young veteran approached, walking with a limp, and asked if he could sit with them for a while. He didn't say much at first, just watched Maple and let the silence settle. After a while, he whispered, "I saw her at the center. She made me believe it's okay to try again." Olivia nodded, understanding more than words could say. She realized then that the ripples of their journey would carry on, far beyond what she could ever witness. In the weeks that followed, the story of Maple continued to spread. The article in the newspaper brought more volunteers to the animal shelter, and several more horses found loving homes. Therapists in town launched new programs, bringing therapy animals into more schools, hospitals, and clinics. Maple became a quiet legend, her story a beacon for anyone struggling to believe in second chances. But for Olivia, the greatest lesson was found in the everyday moments. Those quiet mornings in the barn, the soft nicker that greeted her each sunrise, the way Maple still leaned into her during thunderstorms, anchoring them both. On the anniversary of Maple's arrival, Olivia wrote a letter to the rescue stable. In it, she shared what she'd learned. Healing isn't a race. It's not about erasing scars, but about growing around them, together. Sometimes love means waiting in silence. Sometimes it means taking a risk, even when you're scared. The bravest thing Maple and I ever did was to trust each other, one day at a time. I hope anyone who hears our story remembers, there's always hope, even when you feel lost. Don't give up on yourself. And don't be afraid to reach out, to adopt, to volunteer, to offer a gentle hand or a listening ear. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness are what change everything. On a Sunday, with the sun high above and laughter drifting across the fields, Olivia walked beside Maple through the open gate, the city and the mountains sprawling before them. Maple's head was high, her eyes clear, each scar a testament to what they'd survived and overcome, together. As they passed by, Olivia's voice, stronger now, carried above the din. If you're struggling, reach out. Give someone, or some horse, a chance to change your life. Adopt, volunteer, heal together. And with that, the story of Olivia and Maple continued, not as an ending, but as a new beginning, a testament that love, patience, and second chances ripple outward, changing not only one life, but many.